Thank you for taking this moment to breathe and to listen to what can change your life forever. My name is Ragnar Zinikas, and I'm the founder of Starpreneur TV, How to Dominate Your Decade talk show, World Women Conference and Awards, creator of Coral Desk, the coach of the Changemakers, and co-author of the book, Dominate the Decade. My mission is to empower through education. Thank you for joining us. Today, I have the honor to talk with Ricardo Cabete, and he's joining us from Portugal, and he is a specialized trainer in emotional intelligence. As mentioned, and I think a lot of people who know me, this has been my passion for a very long time. So thank you very much for joining us. Can you tell us who Ricardo is? Why are you doing what you're doing, and what is your purpose in this life?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, for asking me to come here. It's a pleasure. And so my name is Ricardo Cabete. I'm an emotional intelligence trainer and speaker. And my life has been very different from a few years before, because I'm just a simple guy that went through some hard difficulties in life. And I learned from that, and I was very, very shy. When I was young, I was very, very shy. I couldn't speak to girls. I just would shut up. I wouldn't say my opinion because I was afraid to be judged also. And I used to live with my mom. And when I was 16 years old, my mom died. And it's like my whole world would just fall down, and I didn't know what to do. And in that moment, I realized that I couldn't see past that moment, the future. I was 16 years old. I was still a kid. And I went really down at that moment. So I didn't get any good grades. I can't say I was depressed, but I can say that I didn't have self-esteem. I couldn't manage my emotions. I would just eat more. I was not emotionally intelligent at all. And what happened was I entered university. It was engineer university. And I was eager to have success, to show that I can have success even though I was really down. And what happened was I didn't have success. At the end of the first year, my dad came to me and asked me, so how it went the first year? Did you went through the second year? Are you feeling good? And I lied. I told him, yes, everything's going fine. I'm having success. I'm doing good. But I totally lied because I was a wreck. I was skipping classes. I was not going even to the university. I was just going out with my girlfriend or just not doing anything all day long. And in that moment was this little lie that I told my father transformed in a big, big lie. After 3 years in the university, I was still in the first year, and my dad and my whole family and even some friends thought that I was almost an engineer. So I lived like this second life. It was the worst 3 years of my life for sure, because I lived in a lie. I lived with frustration. I lived with failure every day, but alone, without talking to anyone. And so 3 years later, my dad came to me, to my room, and said, tomorrow, please bring the report card from all these years, please. And in that moment, I started crying, and I told him the truth. I told him, sorry, Dad, I hate engineering university. I don't know what to do. And I disappointed my dad. I disappointed my whole family. But it was a big weight out of my shoulders. And from that moment on, I realized that lying or living, closing in a shell is not good. It was really, really bad. So I learned one lesson is we have to show our vulnerability, because that is courage. And So I changed. I went to mathematics, another university. Now I loved it. So I have a mathematics degree also. But it wasn't my passion. It wasn't my passion. I was still lost for a few years because I know that mathematics was not my passion, but I didn't know what it was. And those were hard years also because I felt lost in life. And then I started to, when I was 22 years old, this was another moment in my life that changed my life. When I was 22 years old, a friend of mine invited me to go to a karaoke. Well, my biggest fears when I was a child was to speak in public and sing in public. And why sing? Because singing was always one of my biggest passions. I love to sing. And I went to the karaoke and I said to my friend, I'm going, but I'm not going to sing. Please don't force me to sing because I'm afraid. And she said, yeah, don't worry. But she lied. So she forced me all night. Hey, you have to sing, Ricardo, you have to sing. And in that moment was the first time in my life where I faced my fears. And I was so scared, but I went to that stage and I sang for the first time, around 40 people in the room. And it was life-changing because I closed my eyes all the way through the song. I sang from the heart. And when I opened my eyes, I saw 40 people clapping for me and cheering. And for me, they were clapping and cheering because I overcome the fear that was for 22 years old. And from that moment on, I started to face my fears and to risk more because I was not risking, so I was not suffering, right? But I was suffering in another way. So then I entered Toastmasters. For those who don't know what Toastmasters is, Toastmasters International is an American international organization that helps people overcome their fear of public speaking and also train and develop communication and leadership skills also. So I entered Toastmasters just for fun. I entered the contest because there's the World Championship of Public Speaking. And so in the first year, I was the European vice champion of public speaking. And that competition was nice. So I kept going. In the second year, I went to the final and I failed, I didn't win. And in the third year, I was the European champion of public speaking. So when I look back, I was afraid to speak in public. And there I was, the European champion of public speaking. I went to the finals in Vancouver in Canada, and I got to the top 30 speakers in the world. So that was a big achievement for a shy boy that I was afraid to speak in public. Also, after the karaoke night, I said, hey, maybe I could get in the band and be a singer in a band, a rock band, because I love rock. And so I tried a local band here in Lisbon, Portugal. I'm from Portugal. And so we started playing. After 3 years being in the band, and so this was in 1995, we won a prize here in Portugal, and we went to perform in a big international festival it's called the Super Rock Festival here in Portugal, with big international bands like the Black Eyed Peas, for example, the Hives, New Order, and other big bands in Portuguese also. So there I was again, someone that was afraid to sing and speak in public, and there I was overcoming my fears, and it felt so good. And after that, what I really realized with Toastmasters, people would come to me and say, hey, Ricardo, you inspire me. Your speech inspired me to do this or to change my job or to risk more. And realize maybe if people like to hear me, if I inspire people to do things, I always loved personal development, but I never realized that I could be the speaker, that I could be the trainer just because I was afraid. But people were the ones that inspired me, that helped me to be the speaker that I am today. And now what I do is get back, right? So now I inspire more people. So now I train them how the brain works, how they can use emotional intelligence, because I show them with my story that you can develop emotional intelligence. I gotta tell you, I'm not the most emotionally intelligent person in the world, for sure. But if I compare myself 20 years ago and right now, I'm a completely different person. My emotional intelligence is much, much higher. Not because it happened, because I train. That's the secret in emotional intelligence, is training. So this is a little bit of my path.
So let's give for the audience who doesn't understand the difference, what is the intelligence and intellectual intelligence and emotional intelligence. What is the difference?
Yes, we can get here the IQ and EQ. That's what we're talking here, right? So IQ, most people know what it is, right? It's like you said, intellectual, the rational, the logic, the thinking. That's the technical abilities. That's the IQ. That's our intelligence or general intelligence. And for a lot of years, and in the 1910 until 1990, more or less, there was very powerful the IQ idea. So if you have a high IQ, you're going to be successful. You're going to be more happy. You're going to get the best jobs. If you have a low IQ, you're not going to be successful. You're not going to get good jobs. So even human resources would hire based on IQ, right? But now it changed because EQ, that's the emotional quotient or emotional intelligence, is I call it the secret ingredient for success and happiness. Secret because most people still don't know how powerful it is. So EQ, emotional intelligence, is the ability to identify our emotions, to understand the message that each emotion sends to us. It's also the ability to motivate ourselves, and the last part of emotional intelligence, and most important also, is the ability to understand other people's emotions based on facial expression, for example, body movements or tone of voice, and to manage our relationship. And all of this is just a small part, because if you want to manage stress or anxiety, you need emotional intelligence. If you want to be able to give a better feedback at work in your team or be a better leader, you need a lot of emotional intelligence, because the skills of relationship management are very strong, and you need to train and practice. And this is another concept that's behind emotional intelligence, is the neuroplasticity. What is it? It's just a neuroscience method or concept, where scientists discovered very recently that our brain is plastic, not made from plastic, but plastic. There's plasticity. This means that the scientists believed until the 1990s, that our brain would evolve until we're adults, like 20 or 22 years old, and then it would stop, and then it would start losing abilities. They found out from different researches that our brain keeps always developing, always. It means that even if you're 80 or 90 years old, you can change the structure of your brain depending on your habits, of your thoughts and your emotions. So that means you can train not just physical abilities like riding a bike or learning a new language, even when you're 80 or 90, but you can still develop emotional intelligence, soft skills. It doesn't matter the age. So that's very important. You can train, and I can say I'm the living proof of that. And there's a lot of people that are living proofs that in a certain time of their lives, they were not emotionally intelligent, and then they develop because they train. This is what I do. I help people. I give the tools. I don't train for them, right? There's no magic, each person has to train, but I give them the tools, okay, and teach them how they can train emotional intelligence for each skill.
I think what is very important for our audience also to understand that that intellectual intelligence has been named as a mindset mainly whenever we read any leadership book, whenever we see any entrepreneurial book, or whoever is talking about mindset usually talks about the intellectual intelligence, which if we see also why it has been so focused for many years only on that, is that the main books are written by men, and as we know, most of the men think with the head, not with the emotions. So and that has been very fascinating, because I see that today's leaders, and especially the new age leaders, are noticing the emotional intelligence more and more. And I think I would love to have your comment on that. Uh, why or where does the change comes? Because when we are young, especially boys, the cultures, it's happening anywhere. It's not only Europe, it's not only Mexico, it's not only US. Especially when you're a boy, then you are told not to really feel through your emotions, not to, like, don't cry, you're not a girl, don't be strong. What do you think, like, where did the change now come from, or when did we really started to feel that we actually need to have the connection? I think the best would be that what is the difference between the emotional or IQ and EQ is that we have the connection with our head, with our heart. So what would you say as a man, and now teaching something which hasn't really been maybe in a focus for so many generations for men?
Yes. Before I answer your question, I just want to say a little detail. In my trainings, emotional intelligence trainings, when it's for the general public, everyone can go. So men and women, but 85% of the attendees are women on average. So it goes like you said. I think it started changing in 1995 when Daniel Goleman, one of the main specialists on emotional intelligence, wrote a book called Emotional Intelligence, Why EQ Can Matter More Than IQ. So that was a game changer because everyone was like, IQ is the main predictor for success. But the book explains very well with research backed up by scientific research that emotional intelligence is by far the most important predictor for success. But we don't need research to understand that. Every time I ask in a training, it doesn't matter if it's a man or a woman, they all answer the same. When I ask, think of a leader in your life, someone, a boss, a father, doesn't matter. What are the characteristics when you look at that leader that you think that made him or her a good leader? And 90% or more of the characteristics are emotional intelligence skills or soft skills. It's not the technical skills. They say something, he could inspire. He would inspire me. He would communicate in a way that was very empathic, for example, right? So he could give, like, how he gave the feedback to everyone, or he can gather everyone. So it's the behavior, right? It's the behavior skills that makes a good leader. Of course, you have to have the knowledge, but what happens here is in the last years, like maybe 20, 30, 40 years, what happens is most of the people, a lot of people get higher degrees. So the technical skills are more leveled. So human resources, when they have a candidate, they see, okay, you have a lot of people with almost the same technical skills. What makes the difference is the emotional intelligence skills. Why? Because we don't learn that at school. We learn in school, we learn physics, mathematics, English. We learn a lot of languages, but we don't learn the language of emotions. That's the big difference. This is something that we need to put in our schools, is emotional intelligence or behavior skills, like leadership, like self-awareness and other important skills, right? So that's where it started to change with Daniel Goleman. And then what happens was big companies like Coca-Cola, Google, Nike, they all realized that if they have emotional intelligence programs training their employees, their results, the return on investment would be very high. So there's a lot of ROIs, examples on emotional intelligence training programs. So if you're watching, if you want to know the ROIs for your company or just for curiosity, talk to me and I'll send it to you. Okay? So this is it, because a man, like you said, is more, in general, and there's exceptions, of course, more logic. So imagine a man that's a CEO. What he wants for the company is to get higher results, more profit. When he understands that if he trains emotional intelligence, the profits will be higher, the sales will be higher, he will do the training. And the big corporations, they realized already, not just the big, the small ones also. So that's the big difference. It's not just emotions, because men associate with, oh, emotions are for women or something like that, right? I can't cry because I'll be weak. I'll be weak if I cry. I'll be weak if I show who I really am, that I have failures, that I make mistakes. So that's one of the powerful skills, is vulnerability. I believe that the leader of the future will be a vulnerable leader. And just like emotional intelligence, the leaders, men and women, are realizing it's important. Already there's a movement started with Brené Brown. She has a great TED talk about vulnerability and great books also. She also has a book called Dare to Lead. It's about vulnerability in leadership. And what happens is vulnerability is key. Why? Imagine a leader that is afraid of vulnerability, so he doesn't admit his mistakes. Okay, I'm going to give an example of a man, but it's the same thing for a woman. Okay, imagine a leader and he doesn't admit his mistakes to his team. What happens is a leader that doesn't admit his mistakes to his team, or saying it another way, leaders that don't admit their mistakes to their teams have teams that don't admit their mistakes to their leaders. And that is very bad. A leader that doesn't have all the information inside the team, it can't be a good leader. He won't make the good decisions because it doesn't have all the right information. So people won't say when they are they have difficulties, they need help, they won't say because they're afraid of judgment. But if the leader says, hey, I make mistakes, so if you make mistakes, please come to me and I will help you. That is a game changer. So that's very important. That's just a small advantage of vulnerability.
I think what us as individuals also need to understand while for example, being on a personal growth path, is that when we go to any type of events, when we read the books, when we listen to podcasts, and we understand that the motivation gives us or takes us to the road. But what a lot of people do not understand, it's like why after 2 weeks we sort of we're stuck, because we felt so empowered 2 weeks ago when we went to see the, let's say, Daniel Goleman, and he talked about all of that. But I think that that the way that most of the coaching, teaching, training has been built from the mindset point of view. That means that they really get you fired up But if you don't really feel it through, and if it doesn't really touch something inside you, you will never take action on it. And that's why I would say that the greatest coach or trainer is someone that can actually touch the emotional side of you, not the mindset of like we can write every morning our whatever encouraging words we wanna teach ourselves, like who we are, but I think when we don't really feel the connection between that word and yes, I am courageous, or yes, I am confident, then those words you can repeat as much as you want, but there's no change. What would you comment on that? Like, how do you teach people differently?
Yes. That's a very nice topic. For example, for the motivation events, for example, or that people come out really motivated, but after 1 or 2 weeks, not so much motivated, and that has an explanation inside our brain, and that means that the energy in your body or your mood, if you feel happy in that moment, you have a lot of energy in your body. What happens is it changes the way you see the world and yourself. So if I'm very, very happy, I'm energized, I have a lot of energy in my body, and in my thoughts is I'm very powerful. I can do everything, so I'm very confident. I'm going to do it. I'm going to train every day. If we think this, what happens is we really believe in that moment. But when our energy goes down, it starts to change. When our mood changes, it changes the way we see the world. So when we change that mood, when we change the energy, we can't see anymore that we're going to do it. We're not so confident anymore, and it loses every time it passes. What happens is emotional intelligence, like I always say, is like going to the gym. If you go to the gym one time, you're not going to be fit. You have to go 3 times or 5. You have to move. You have to do exercise, right? But in a regular basis. It's not going one time or doing a weekend of exercise that it's going to change your life. No, it has to be consistent. Emotional intelligence is the same thing. You have to train, train, train. One of the things is I call myself not just an emotional intelligence coach. I call myself an emotional intelligence personal trainer. Why? Because this is what I do. I say, people, you use this tool, and I motivate, and that motivation is always there. So that's why personal training, emotional intelligence personal training, it works better than just isolated events. Because isolated events, the effect goes down. If you don't keep it going, the effect goes down. And personal training, it's a coach, okay, if you want to call it, but it's something consistent. And consistency gets results.
We had a little interruption in Facebook. That's why I was.
Okay.
You froze in Facebook for some reason, so the team is trying to fix that. But let's continue.
Okay.
Why is it important to really develop the emotional intelligence? You did touch a little on that, but for example, can we take more on more maybe personal level, like if you would be a parent and you need to teach you have a son and you have a daughter, so how would you, or what recommendations would you give for parents, for example, to really help them to sort of emphasize the importance of emotional intelligence?
Okay. So there's 2 sides of this, is how you can teach your kids why emotional intelligence is important, and how can you use emotional intelligence skills with your kids, right? So you have these 2 things that are important. For kids love emotional intelligence. They love talking about emotions. Our adults, not so much, because we didn't have that practice. But every time I do the practice, or other colleague of mine does the practice with kids. They love it, but it has to be inside a game. It has to be engaging, right? So what happens is they practice emotional intelligence, but we don't need, depending on the age, of course, we don't need to tell them, hey, now we're going to practice emotional intelligence. No, you do a game where they share their emotions, they share their successes, they share their failures. So every time they do this, they're practicing emotional intelligence, being aware of their emotions and teaching them that they can do something about it. When they are angry, for example, instead of saying, like you said, hey, don't be angry, it's bad for you, or don't be sad, don't cry, that's not practicing emotional intelligence. That's something it's bad to do. This is something very important. Every parent has a good intention when they're educating their child or their son or their daughter. So the intention is always good, but because the parents didn't have those skills, they didn't learn those skills when they were young, they teach the same way their parents taught them. So this is very important. The intention is always positive. So this is one of the ways, is to incorporate games where children just share their emotions. That's just one of the skills on emotional intelligence, sharing our emotions, being more open and not keeping it to them, like I did when I was young, and I didn't want to show that I was a failure in that moment. I wasn't a failure. It's just a part of success, but I was afraid to show that, so I lied. So that's just one example. The other part is how to deal with kids. And that's a very complex, we can do like a complete training on it. But one thing that is very important is not to use judgment with kids, and also practice unconditional love. For example, I'm going to tell you, imagine a parent that says, hey, to their child, when you do that, when you behave well, mommy or daddy likes you very much. Okay, this is a normal thing. We hear that, right? But it's not a good practice. But what happens inside the child's head is, okay, if I behave, if I do the things my parents want me to do, they will love me. This means that if I don't do it, they don't love me. And that is something that if you do this one or twice, no problem. But during the years, it sticks in their heads that there's a conditional love. They only love you if you do certain things. What happens is they start to hide things. Okay, if I share what I'm really doing in my life now with my parents, they're not going to love me. And it happens to parents, and it happens to friends also, right? So every time someone lies to us, the first thing we do is point fingers. We say, hey, you're lying, you're a liar. So we judge the other person instead of emotional intelligence is asking why, instead of judging and saying you're a liar, is why is the other person lying to me? And that is very powerful. Understanding what's behind the behavior. The only thing we see is the behavior. Now, emotional intelligence is, let me see what's behind. What motivated this behavior that I don't like, that I don't accept, but what's behind? And when we search for it, we can identify it.
So it's more not educating our kids, which already naturally have the emotional intelligence. It's more educating the parents how not to kill the emotional intelligence in the kids.
Yes, because like they say, the kids are pure, and if we don't say don't cry or don't, they just do. They cry. They say they're sad. So they're more emotional intelligent than we think, right? Sometimes more than we are. So let's not kill that, and what happens here is, it's hard to teach the kids when they go home and their parents unteach them, right? So what we have to do is a big challenge in our society. We have to teach both kids and parents. So for now, I started with adults, so I'm starting with parents. But in the next years, I will go and teach kids also. And I started already. That's one of my goals. But I do mostly I do training with adults still.
Beautiful. So could you give us some practical tips so we can improve our emotional intelligence as well, whether we are just as individuals or whether we are business owners or leaders, or like maybe there's some even difference between that. But I think if we go down to the core, then it doesn't matter what we do as a profession. We need to have those or pay attention to those things.
Yeah. Well, there's one thing when I do personal training with my clients is I usually start really low. And sometimes they ask me, why am I doing this? Why this has something to do with emotional intelligence? So I'm gonna give you 4 tips that are very powerful for emotional intelligence, and you may not think they are related. So the 4 ones. The first one is movement. Our bodies and our minds are connected. Our bodies were made to move. And we live in a society very sitting down like we are right now. And what happens is it's not good for our body. And then you say, okay, but I do exercise every morning 1 hour. And then I ask, what do you do the rest of the day? And most people say, yes, I do the exercise and then I'm sitting down the rest of the day. Okay, you're not fit if you do that. Just because you go every day, you have to move. Because if you stay 6, 5, 4 hours, 8 hours sitting down and you don't move in between, you're going to have neck pains. Maybe if you're young, you don't have it yet, but you will. And the posture will change. And what happens is if you don't move, it's harder to manage your emotions. Okay? You need to be in a good physical shape so you can manage your emotions. So that's something that usually people don't talk about, and it's very, very important. Second tip is nutrition. Nutrition has a big connection with emotions. So if you eat big fries, McDonald's, hamburger, for example, after you eat it, you're very full and you need to react and use your emotional intelligence, rational and emotional. It's not going to work the same thing if you eat some grilled fish. Okay? If you eat grilled fish and you have to then react and like in an argument, for example, you have an argument with the other person. If you have the grilled fish, you're more likely to use reasoning and be more balanced. If you eat the burger, maybe you'll give them a punch or something like that. I don't know. It depends on the personality, but it's just an example. It's very, very important. If you eat well, you're more likely to manage your emotions well. And it's kind of intuitive also. Third tip is breathing. The way you breathe, it has a big impact on the way you manage your emotions. And there's a breakthrough research, amazing one, that is scientists discovered that for each emotional state, you have a different breathing pattern. It means if you have anger, your breathing pattern is kind of intuitive also, right? You go back, right? It's this shallow breathing you have. If you're relaxed, you have a more profound breathing. But what they realized, or what they found out, is even more impressive, is if you change your breathing pattern, you'll feel the emotion. So they got people to do those breathing patterns, like for example, they found the breathing pattern for sadness. And they said to people, without saying anything, just breathe this way. And then they asked, what do you feel? And most of them said, I feel sad. And the other group, they said, okay, now breathe this way. After they breathed that way, they said, how do you feel? I feel angry. So that was the angry breathing pattern. So that's amazing. That means you have the power just with your breathing to change your mood or state like that. That's very powerful. So the The last tip on these four is sleep. When you have a good night's sleep, and that's also intuitive, but there's a new science of sleep, things that we learn that we can apply. For example, I'm from Portugal, and maybe you know one of the most famous persons from Portugal is Cristiano Ronaldo. And Cristiano Ronaldo, he has a sleep coach. Okay, he knows that if he has a good, not just quantity, the most important is the quality of the sleep. So there's a lot of things you can do to improve the quality of your sleep. So one of the things that I use with my clients, every time I start a program with my clients, what I do is first, let's check these four components. Okay, so nutrition, the movement, the breathing, and the sleep. You have to have this. And just with these small changes, they feel better already. And a lot of them feel much better and almost say, okay, that's it. Most of the time, that's all they need, okay? Because they can manage more, they have more energy in their life, etc. Okay? So another tip, maybe this is one of the most powerful techniques in emotional intelligence, is mindfulness meditation or mindfulness. People ask me, what is mindfulness? Mindfulness is the ability to stay in the moment, to be in the moment, present moment. So it could be a meditation where you close your eyes and focus on your breathing. Okay, it can be, and it's powerful, but it's much more than that. You can use it's so-called informal mindfulness. So in the morning, you're having a shower, and when you're having a shower in the morning, instead of thinking, what's the meeting I'm going to have? What am I going to do? I'm going to talk in public. I'm afraid. I'm anxious. So we start the day feeling stressed and anxious, and we're having a shower, right? So mindfulness, and my tip for you is next time you have the shower in the morning, is train your focus. Instead of focusing on your day, what's going to happen, focus on the water going in your body. That's very powerful, because like that, when you focus on that, you're not thinking, so you're not anxious anymore. So another powerful technique, mindfulness. For example, you're talking to someone at work or a friend, doesn't matter. If your focus is 100% on what the other person is talking, you're practicing mindfulness because you're in the moment, the present moment. You're focused. A lot of the time, we are hearing the other person, and in our minds are already thinking what we are going to respond. So we are talking to another person, and we are not listening to understand. We are listening to reply. And a lot of the times, when that person is saying the key thing that we should understand to solve the conflict, for example, we're just worried about what we're going to say. We want to win the argument. So mindfulness is very important. Focus your conversations to understand the other person. What's behind those words? The emotions, the feeling, the needs. Okay. I had another one, yes. It's a skill. It's also a communication tool. I don't know if you heard of it. It's called nonviolent communication. Nonviolent communication was created by a psychologist called Marshall Rosenberg. He died just a few years ago. And it's one of the most powerful communication tools I've ever seen. And I use it in my life, personal life and professional life. So what is it is, when you talk to other person, for example, you can use it with your own self-talk. But when you talk to other person, first thing, you don't judge. Okay, you try to understand and acknowledge what's the need of the other person, what's the emotion of the other person, and you talk in facts. You don't judge. For example, we're talking about the kids, right? So if I say to my daughter, "Hey, you left your shoes in the living room, so you're messy." If I say you're messy, that's a judgment. That's my opinion. Okay, and a lot of people don't know what is the difference between facts and judgments or evaluations. And nonviolent communication helps us. So how can we talk? If I say to my daughter, "You left your shoes in the floor of the living room," That's a fact. Okay? If I say you're messy, that's an evaluation. What happens in a conflict, a possible conflict? If I say to my daughter, hey, your shoes are over there again, you always do that. So when you say always do that, she can say, no, remember 2 years ago, there was one time I didn't do it, right? So it's very dangerous to use always or never, the words always or never. So if I say you're messy, it can start a conflict. She say, no, I'm not messy, because she will feel judged. If I say you left your shoes in the floor of the living room, she might say yes, and something like this. But it's not a conflict. She will listen more. That's what we want. That's the observation part. And then we're going to talk about emotions and needs. We don't have time, of course, to give the tool, but it's very, very powerful. What's the difference, or the main point here is in our society, and this is something that I was going to talk after the tips for dominate the decade also, but this is very important. In our society, we are constantly judging actions. It's like if you see the sea, the water, it's what's outside the water. So we see the action and we judge, but we don't see what's underneath the water. Emotional intelligence is the ability to see it clearly, to see what's underneath and what drives our behavior, what's in the roots. Like if you imagine a big, big tree, inside the seed that makes the tree are universal human needs. Universal human needs are the seed for every action, every emotion we do. I'll give you an example. Imagine a boss, a leader that is, he has a team, okay? And one of his team members didn't deliver a report, a very important report on time. So he asks to that team member, who was very angry, and asks for the team member, get to my office. And when he gets there, he starts yelling and screaming. It's very, very unpleasant conversation, big conflict. And when you see that, you may say, hey, it was rude. You don't like that behavior. It was calling names, say you're an incompetent, or etc., etc. So when you see that aggressiveness, you judge. He's a bad leader. It's not gonna work. But if you think, why is he yelling? And when you go to the needs, you might find out that for him, it's very important to be competent. It's very important to get things done. And if you think maybe he's a leader, he has a boss also, right? And now he has to tell the boss that everything went wrong. And what happens, maybe he's afraid, remember emotion, he's afraid to lose his job. Because he's responsible for the team, for the project, and the project was really, really bad because of that mistake. So we judge the behavior, of course it's not acceptable, but we connect with the needs. And when we connect with the needs, we create empathy. And sometimes you say, yes, but there's some behaviors that people do that I can't accept. And I agree totally with you. Of course, there's horrible things, and I'm not going to start with that because we all know, we all see the news, etc., right? But one thing is the behavior, and another thing is we're all human, and we all have some needs. And when you identify the need, it's easier to understand and then correct, or to help the people to not do it again. Okay, so nonviolent communication. Search the book, Marshall Rosenberg. He has books. The main book is called Nonviolent Communication. He has books on parenting, how to communicate with your child with nonviolent communication. Like he has at least 5 or 6 books. Very, very interesting.
We actually had the honor to interview his son, Simon Rosenberg, which just gave out the book on language of life. It's called Human Millionaire. He was just in the show a few weeks ago. He just
you have to introduce him to me. I love that.
Yes, of course we will do so. So it's really nice now to see the continuous or we actually see this in action. So thank you very much
Yes.
for bringing Marshall and also Simon up to this conversation. So beautiful. Before we have 9 minutes to go, before you will give us your 3 recommendations how to dominate the decade. Don't have a lot of time to take questions, but if you have a question, please leave it now underneath the video. We had some trouble with, I had to connect with Facebook again. I hope all the people connected again. We do have quite so many people now listening. So leave your questions. I see the profile of Ragnar. Those questions we can answer. At least I promise some of them to answer now, and then also here at the Zoom. So Ricardo, 3 recommendations how to dominate.
Okay, I'll be quick. Okay, I'll be quick. So the first one is this. I think the biggest pandemic right now is the misinformation that we have in our world. It's very hard to understand what's real, what's fake, and that is also the ability to filter the information is also an emotional intelligence skill. So that's very important. There's a book that I totally recommend. It's all of you that are listening, is you have to buy this book if you believe that you want to filter the information and you want to learn how to filter the information. The book is called Factfulness. So Factfulness, and it's very, very, very good. So please buy it. And what happens is we need to understand what is real or what is fake. And our brain has some behaviors, some filters that are good, of course, for our security, for our survival, but sometimes it kind of gives us the wrong information. For example, our brain is made to see first the threats and then see the good things. So we have the tendency to see the negative first. And why is that? Because when we lived in the caverns, we were hunting in the hunting time. What happens is, first, we have to get a safe spot. So because there were lions and tigers that were after us, right? So bears, so we have to find a safe spot. Are we safe now, right? If we are safe, after, then we're going to hunt and find the food. So this is for thousands and thousands, a lot of years. It's programmed in our mind. First, the survival, threat first, the negative first, and then we can go out and find the positive. So that's why positive news don't sell. Negative news sell. It's because how our brain is designed. So don't feel bad if you are in that loop. But we can change. That's the ability of emotional intelligence. You can use your emotion, but in balance with rational and think, hey, is this news something that is going to benefit me? Can I do something about it? Okay, don't listen to it. You just focus on what you can do. If it gives good information for you, and the ability to see if it's fake or not. There's also websites that gives the information, big stories, if it's a fact or not. Okay, it's very important also. The second one is learn in this decade. You need to learn how to manage your emotions, use your vulnerability, and manage the relationships with others. And this connects, and I'm going to tell you the 2 and the 3. The number 3 is the social and digital, because the digital, what is happening is we're not connected. Of course, now there's the pandemic, but it will pass, of course. And we need to connect eye to eye. We were made to connect together, because right now I can see you, but we miss some information. The body information, we miss the aroma, the smell, all the information is not there. And we miss a lot of it. For example, when we write and there's not the tone of voice, there's a lot of conflicts just because some people understood something that is not real. So a lot of conflicts because we're not there. We don't listen to the tone of voice. We don't see the reactions, right? I can say something in my arm right here that you don't see can give you the right information, for example. And so this is very important, is keep trying, keep practicing emotional skills. It's good that it's already a tendency. Emotional intelligence, we know, is all over the place. And that is a good thing because we see, and this is a very good, well, I think it's a good combination that we're going for the digital, but at the same time, we have that awareness that emotional intelligence is very important. So I don't see digital as a bad thing. I think it's very good. Like everything, every tool, you can use it for good or bad. But I think it's a very, very great tool if we don't close ourselves like I did when I was young. And we have to connect. We have to embrace our vulnerability. We all make mistakes. And when we embrace it, it's a sign of courage and not of weakness. And that's very, very powerful. If we practice our emotional intelligence, if we can filter the misinformation, we will have the skills to get more success in our work and to be more happy. There's a big, big study that realized, that found this big conclusion that the main, for more than 10 years, they were trying to find what's the big one factor for happiness. And the conclusion was the quality of our relationships. So emotional intelligence gives you the tool to communicate and nurture your relationships. What I do in my trainings is very, very practical. I don't tell you the theory, I tell you exactly what are the words that you can use, techniques, so you can get more empathy when you're talking to another person, but always with a positive intention. Because sometimes people say, oh, so you teach influence, how to influence. And people sometimes go, oh, you want to manipulate. It's not the thing. It's always with a positive intention. And that is very, very important. To get more sales, to be a better leader, to get your team more motivated, to be a better parent, to be more successful in your family. There's a lot of relationship issues in our world. So we can, for the next decade and for the rest of our lives, we can sum up this. People are looking for success in their professional life and are looking for happiness in their personal life. Emotional intelligence is the secret, or not so secret right now, but it's the secret for success and happiness in our lives.
Agree. And as we don't have time to take any questions, then I suggest the following. So if someone wants to follow you or someone wants to ask questions, maybe regarding to your today's presentation, how they can do so.
Okay, I'm going to give you, so if you have a pen or paper or some place or in the phone or someplace, so write it down. I'm going to give you my phone. Okay, you can add me in WhatsApp and ask me the questions directly. I'm going to give you my email, and then I'm going to tell you what social media where you can find me. Okay, so my phone, and I'm from Portugal, so you have the code. It's 351 9641 45874. I'll tell it again, okay? So 351 9641 45874. Okay? So my email, if you prefer email, is Ricardo. Okay, I think my name is right here, so it's easier. So Ricardo.Cabete, my last name, at emotiontalks.com. It's my company. Okay, so Ricardo.Cabete at emotiontalks.com. Then you can find me in social media, Facebook, LinkedIn, and Instagram. Just write Ricardo Cabete. Cabete is a very unusual name here in Portugal, so one or two, I'm one of those. So it was a pleasure to be here, Ragnar. Thank you so much. And as you can see, emotional intelligence is a passion to me. I can see it's a passion to you also. So thank you so much for your invitation. And I'm looking forward to keep working with you and collaborate with you. And for everyone that is watching, thank you so much for coming. And let's keep in touch and improve the world, because we need it, of course. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody who joined us today. Today, you have a choice to make, whether you want to be the hero of your life or not. How? I hope you took notes. If you didn't, go back to this video, which is going to be available on Coral Desk Facebook page and also Coral Desk YouTube channel. So go back to it, listen to it, write down things, and write down action points for yourself. But what is more important is really take action on those points that you write down. By that way, you can change your life and become the hero of your life. But only not that, you can be the hero in someone else's life. How? By sharing this video. Because you never know who needs to hear about this topic, who has always been thinking why every single book which I have read, why every single event which I have gone never works for me. It doesn't, because you don't have the connection between your mind and your heart. And until you don't feel it, you're not going to be successful in that. So take the action, change your own life and change someone else's life by sharing this video. Be the hero in your life and in someone else's life. I will see you if you speak Spanish. In less than 1 hour, we have Teresa Encaña from Venezuela. She's the owner of Wow Mujeres, Wow Women, here with us, talking about the women empowerment movement. So if you're interested, join us in less than an hour. And tomorrow, the same time, tomorrow we're going to hit our 100 interviews. So tomorrow we have something to celebrate, and I want to thank you that you have always been here watching, taking action, sharing, and very soon those actions haven't gone unnoticed, and we have surprises for you. Everybody who has shown up, take action on it, so all your actions are noted. So don't think that we don't see things. We do, but we are waiting for the correct time to talk about it. So Ricardo, thank you very much for joining us, sharing your expertise and sharing all the great practical tips on how to really improve our emotional intelligence. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.